complicated. 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. Let's stay focused.
Hey all, it's Tony and we are back. Welcome to episode 4 of the Career Jigsaw. Today's episode will be 100% dedicated to developing yourself. And it doesn't matter where you are in the career cycle. New employees, tenured employees, managers, we all have opportunities to grow. The challenge is this. First, how serious are you in improving? Second, how open are you to feedback? And third, how self-aware are you? So why a development plan and who are they for? Well, why? I would ask yourself this. Do I want to be more effective in my current role? Do I want to open up doors to take on more responsibility? Or do I want to advance my career? And this leads me to the quote of the day. Personal development is the belief that you are worth the effort, time, and energy needed to develop yourself. And these development plans aren't just soft skills. They can include and should include very tangible, measurable areas too, like people management, project management, or even performance improvement. And by the way, a performance improvement plan, aka PIP, is different from a development plan. A PIP tends to be a turnaround plan. It's short term. A development plan usually is longer term. It's more of an investment and can cover a wide variety of areas. A PIP tends to be very focused on achieving a certain set of goals. Now, there's arguments out there about whether or not everyone deserves a development plan. And honestly, I can see the merit in both arguments for and against. In my opinion, if you're already on a PIP and you've been struggling with performance over a period of time, you aren't necessarily ready for nor would benefit from a development plan. A development plan is more about getting ready for the future, where a PIP is honestly more about surviving today. However, there are nuances here, and it isn't a black and white, one or the other rule. So to get the ball rolling, there are a few key questions you can ask yourself. Questions like, where do I currently lack today in my skills? What are my glaring opportunities? Or, where are my opportunities to go from good to great? Or perhaps, what are the 2 or 3 key areas I need to improve to get to the next level? Now, many companies out there have a really strong commitment to individual development plans. Some actually track written plans. But be careful not to make this a check-the-box activity. Companies can get very obsessed about plan completion without a strong commitment to plan quality. But at the end of the day, no one owns this plan more than you. So don't blame anyone else for your lack of development. You are not an innocent bystander. And although yes, your boss's participation would be welcome and very beneficial, it's no excuse for lack of a plan. And this process starts with self-identification and exploration. Where do I know I lack? But also, what don't I know? How do I get feedback from others to validate my starting point? And how do I make sure what I'm working on is impactful? This is where your boss can be vital. But you have to develop the starting point, not him or her. Okay, let's talk about what's commonly known as the 3 E's of a good development plan: education, experience, and exposure. So what does each mean? Well, for education, this is a learning investment. For example, it could be taking a class, watching a video, or reading a book. And education certainly has a place in laying the groundwork for your development plan. Then there's experience. This is the hands-on stuff where the real learning occurs. This is doing it. This is making mistakes but learning from them. So you can watch a video on riding a bike, but where the real learning occurs is by getting on the bike and trying to ride it. Then there's exposure. So think of this like building your network, but not just a network of likes and followers. Think of this like you're building your constituency that would vote to keep you on the island. So exposure can include them seeing you in action so they can endorse you. So exposure really can include a mentor relationship as part of your action plan. And we'll review some guidelines around what a good mentor relationship should look like in a bit. So in building a plan, be sure to include items in one, two, or all three of the three E's, but don't spread them equally. So in my opinion, 60 to 70% of your plan should be experience. Another 10 to 20 should be education. And then finally, another 10 to 20% exposure. But again, to reinforce, the real learning occurs with hands-on experience. Starting the process of trying to identify what skills do I need to develop can be a daunting task. So where could you begin? I've got 5 key areas for you that I think are worthwhile to consider. First, go look at your current job description and read through what skills are required for the role you're currently in, and do any stand out that are in need of development? Also, go look at your last performance appraisal and read both what is written and maybe what's in between the lines, and look for some clues here. You also can lean on employee feedback. If you lead a team and you're a manager, is there any opportunity for you to get feedback from an annual survey that can help you form your development plan? Also, if you play on a team, is there another way to get feedback from your teammates? Some companies do 360 surveys that include peer feedback. And then lastly, go look at the job description of the role you want, the role you desire. And again, what skills are required for the role and what gaps might you have? These 5 key areas will help you jumpstart your development plan and where to spend your time. There are a few key points I need to make here to help you really frame your focus. Point number 1, selecting a skill for development does not mean it's broken. This is not an admission of guilt. It simply means that this skill is important enough for you to make time investing in it. Point number 2, leveraging a towering strength as an action item is not taboo for a development plan. The question to ask yourself is this action item helping me become better? Sometimes taking something already strong and making it better is worthwhile and not off limits. Point number 3, don't tackle too much. At any given time, you should be focused on no more than 2 to 3 skill opportunities. Even one can make sense. And think about it. If you develop this plan correctly under the 3 E's, there will be plenty to do. And then key number 4, your plan should evolve. Think of them more as fluid and less as something that starts and finishes. As any of the 3 E's are completed, think about adding new ones on or even replacing them with new skills to develop. I hope that helps. So at this point, if you're still unsure about where to focus your development plan, maybe thinking of some common fears we all have might help narrow down items for your plan. So think about things like fear of failure or fear of public speaking. Believe it or not, death is the second most fear we have. Number 1 is fear of public speaking. Or maybe you fear as a manager having a tough conversation with one of your employees. Or maybe you work on a team and there's certain teammates you just haven't gotten along with and you fear working with them, and investing in this skill might help. Or maybe you're a little nervous about your next meeting with your boss. Or maybe you just fear change. Now, this doesn't mean your development plan should be all fear-based, but why not consider tackling one of your fears? And if you're still not sure at this point where to go, maybe ask yourself this. When it comes to my work schedule life, what keeps me up at night? And imagine your development plan actually helping you sleep better. Speaking of sleepless nights, for many, Sunday nights is the worst night's sleep. And we'll discuss this more in a future episode, but what if you asked yourself why going back to work on Monday affected your sleep so much, and then you had a plan to improve it? Okay, it's time to make this real. Let's get into what this sounds like, what it should look like. So I'm going to start with an easy, silly example. Let's say a 3-year-old out there wants to learn how to ride a bike. And they're going to write a development plan on how to do it. So they're going to employ the 3 E's, education, experience, and exposure. So they start with the first E, education. And they decide in their plan, they're going to watch a YouTube video on how to ride a bike. And then they get to the experience part, and they're going to take what they learned in that video, and they're going to get on the bike and start practicing. And then they round out their plan with the exposure piece, which is having mom and dad watch to give you feedback, get them comfortable with your skills, so they eventually will buy you an even better bike. So I hope that kind of starts to frame a little bit about what an education, experience, exposure, action plan could look like around your development plan and skill development. Okay, now for a more adult example. For many, simply being a more effective communicator is a self-identified opportunity. And when you really understand the power of being able to effectively communicate, you will quickly realize this is time well spent. So let's have our starting point number one be, I want to be a better communicator. Now it's time to ask yourself a few questions. First, can I narrow this down a bit? I want to be an effective communicator. Well, what does that mean? Is that in written form, oral form, or both? Second, well, how will I know I've gotten better at this skill? It can be important later on to assess, I invested this time, did it pay off? And then third, do others agree this is an area worth investing in, including my boss? So let's assume the following. Oral communication is my opportunity because I lead a team virtually and I need to be able to communicate with impact to that team. My boss and other stakeholders agree this is a worthwhile investment. Again, doesn't mean it's broken. Just means there's a lot to be gained by being better. And then, well, how will I know I got better? So maybe the reason I picked this is because my team is slow to adopt new ideas, so my measurement will be improvement in speed to adopt. Okay, so now I have my first focus area, communicates with impact, specifically oral communication, and getting my team to adopt. So now it's time to frame my plan around the 3 E's. So let's start with education. What resources are already out there that I could take advantage of? Does my company have any? Have I looked for books or classes on how to better communicate with impact? Now, this is also where you can lean on your boss for ideas. You have the starting point. Now you need help with the meat. Now let's go to experience. Well, what venues or activities can I throw myself into to begin to apply and practice communicating with impact? How can you apply what you learned from the education section? Again, this is when collaboration from your boss can really help. And now we get to exposure. Well, you want someone that can see you in action, especially when you feel you're starting to master new skills. This serves 2 purposes. They can endorse you in this skill as you get better and or give you feedback on your progress. And then lastly in all this, when possible, set a goal. Maybe you can measure improvement. As we mentioned in this example, my team is slow to adopt. So maybe as I improve my communicate with impact skills, the next time we launch something new, I can measure their adoption. So I mentioned before that a mentor could be a great addition in the exposure section of your development plan. But there are some mentor ground rules I want you to think about. So your mentor should not be your boss. This should be someone a little further removed from your day-to-day and not someone necessarily tied to your performance. They should be an objective third party, but they should be someone who possibly has some career influence over you so they can help accelerate your skill development and your growth. I would argue a mentor should know your business and know it pretty well so they can give you advice that is relevant and pertinent to you. I think a mentor should be grounded and not someone who flies too high. You want as much specificity as you can get from a mentor. So the way to think about a mentor is they should be more akin to a therapist and not just a sponsor. So I hope that helps. So now that you've built your plan, what else can you do to make sure that you make it a success? Well, a successful plan requires that you keep it alive and healthy. Well, what do I mean by that? 2 key steps. 1, update it regularly with progress notes, completed items, and new additions. And then secondly, meet with your boss and maybe your mentor regularly to review progress. All right, so that wraps up the advice portion of today's podcast. Now for our weekly Invest in You suggestions, and I have 2. First one's incredibly easy. Go start your development plan. And the second? Well, contact us at thecareerjigsaw.com and ask any question you want to help you in the process.
3, 2, 1.
And now let's wrap with our 3 key takeaways. Number 1, understand that development plans are about making you better, not fixing you. So embrace them and own them. Number 2, build the 3 E's into your action steps as a framework. And then number 3, meet with your leader and or your mentor regularly to review and revise. Well, I hope this focus on development was useful and got you thinking. And I know we already had a quote of the day, but I have a second one to wrap. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Well, podcast people, that is a wrap. Thank you so much for listening in today. If you like what you heard, keep listening, follow us, etc. You know the drill. And also, check out our website at thecareerjigsaw.com. Again, thanks so much for tuning in, and more to come next week. Be safe, all.
We got all things situated. The mathematics were calculated. I feel wasted and I feel jaded. The process here is so complicated.